Happy New Year to everybody. This is the first actual true real live of 2026, and it is impulsive. It's not this is not planned, but I read about something today that just absolutely floored me. It's something that I find to be very interesting. I've done some reading and some sort of research on some of the stuff recently, in recent times. And, you know, I do I do certain work that involves this concept called like windows and mirrors. And the idea being that like a window is a window into somebody else's life and perspective. So when I learn about somebody else's situation or whatever, that's not my own, but it's a window for me into what they might be experiencing, right? That sort of thing. And the reverse of that is, or the opposite side is something that's called a mirror. And a mirror is something that reflects my own lived experience or my background, right? So a mirror might be like, wow, I really relate to this thing. And I find it, and the idea behind both of these concepts, windows and mirrors, is that through windows and through mirrors, one can find compassion and empathy for other people. And it brings people together instead of divides them and spreads them apart. That's like kind of like the basis. And so for me, with this topic, I saw a mirror into, you know, my background, and what it means to be who I am, and or at least my people. And so I found that to be quite interesting. And I got very emotional reading about this. It just really I maybe, another window for me, or sorry, another mirror for me. There's a few mirrors, and I'll share about them. But one of the mirrors is for me, it reflects in me the sort of archivist, story collector. I collect stories, right? I do a lot of interviews on here. We do a lot of reading. I do a lot of archiving. I'm a big archivist. I have a giant vault of media, of interviews that I've conducted, footage that I've shot. I collect it and I store it and I manage it, just hours and hours and hours and terabytes of video, so much stuff that is beneath the surface, just tons and tons of stuff. And why do I do it? And also, journaling, like all these things. Why do I feel the need to do it? Because to me, it's important, because if somebody doesn't take the time to grab it, to capture it, it's lost. It could be lost forever. And that's kind of an interesting part of this story. That's like one aspect of the mirror. The other aspect of the mirror is, well, maybe I should just let's take a look at what this is. I mean, if you read the title and you're watching this, you already know what it is, but let's take a look. I'm actually going to pop open to Reddit. That's not where I first stumbled upon this, but here's what Reddit has to say. This is from Damn That's Interesting. Marie Wilcox, and I'm going to butcher a lot of words like I always do. It's just the way it is. Please bear with me as I do this. Marie Wilcox realized that she was the last person on Earth who could speak Wukchumni language fluently. So at 82 years old, she taught herself to use a computer and spent 7 years typing a 6,000 word Wʌk̆tʃʌmni dictionary, the first written record of the language in history to save it from extinction. I mean, just like let that sit with you for a moment. And when I stumbled across this, that brought me to the Global Oneness Project, which is where I'm taking you over now. And that's what this is right here. And this documentary that's called Marie's Dictionary, Learn about language loss and revitalization in California. It's by Emmanuel Vaughan-Lee. And I'm going to actually put the link to the documentary is only about 9 minutes long. If you find this stuff as fascinating as I do, the link is down in the description. I'm also going to put it here in the chat. Give this a watch. I think it will floor you. Maybe it won't floor you. For me, it floored me. It really floored me. So the Global Oneness Project put together this documentary and this sort of this sort of introduction to I guess it's like a way to teach about it, actually. So we're gonna actually read from this right now, and we'll go into I'm just talking too much. Okay. The short documentary tells the story of Marie Wilcox, the last fluent speaker of the Wʌkćʌmni language, and the dictionary she created to keep her language alive. For Miss Wilcox, the Wʌkćʌmni dictionary, I hope I'm pronouncing it, wʌkćʌmni dictionary, the Wʌkćʌmni language had become her life. She had spent more than 20 years working on the dictionary and continues to refine and update the text. Just to clarify, there's no date on this. There's no date on this website here. So I don't know when this was actually written. I guess she was still working on it at this time, though. Okay. Either which way. So she spent 20 years working on this dictionary, continues to refine and update the text. Through her hard work and dedication, she has created a document that will support the revitalization of the Wʌkćʌmni language for decades to come. Along with her daughter, Jennifer Malone, she travels to conferences throughout California and meets other tribes who struggle with language loss. Miss Wilcox tribe, the Wʌkćʌmni, is not recognized by the federal government. It is part of the broader Yokuts tribe, Yokuts tribal group native to Central California. Before European contact, as many as 50,000 Yokuts, I am so sorry if I'm butchering this, lived in the region, but those numbers have steadily diminished. Today, it is estimated that fewer than 200 Wʌkćʌmni remain. That's incredible. It's incredibly sad. So that's her right there. That's Marie. And Marie started the Wʌkćʌmni dictionary by writing down the words she knew on envelopes and papers, right? Isn't that crazy? Marie is so approachable, and my students connected with her on a very personal level. Marie's dictionary opened up my students' eyes to how fundamental language is to preserving or destroying cultures. My students wrote handwritten letters to Marie, which were filled with compassion for her efforts to revitalize her language. You have to take a moment, let's take a moment just for a minute and think about how many languages have been lost to time, right? Think about all human beings, roughly, the various different spans of time, but let's say 200,000 years, right? Although I think language actually started 50,000 years. Wait, hold on a second. Let's double check that. We're going to the Googs real quick. When did human language first develop?
Human language likely emerged with Homo sapiens around 135,000 to 200,000 years ago, while it became a widespread social tool later, perhaps around 100,000 years ago. Evidence suggests it was present in early modern humans.
Okay, so I wasn't totally off. I said 200,000 and then I said 50,000. Did I? I think either which way. Okay, so human language has been around for 200,000 years, right? And you think about some of the oldest languages that are still spoken today, some of them. One of them, which is Hebrew, and that's the language of my people, the Jews, right? And that's why, to me, that's another mirror, because Hebrew was essentially dead. It was always spoken ceremoniously, but for nearly 2,000 years, everyday spoken Hebrew did not exist until it was too revitalized by this guy. I think it was Jabotinsky. Was Jabotinsky or was it Yehuda who revitalized the Hebrew language in the early 20th century?
Eliezer ben Yehuda revitalized the Hebrew language in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. He transformed it from a language used mainly in religious services into a modern, spoken language for everyday use, through his work with dictionaries and his dedication to making Hebrew the common language.
I mean, that's insane. Like, I don't think you realize. And the thing was, there were certain words that were lost to time, right? Like, you couldn't get them back. They survived in the bastardized versions. Like, there are all these, we've talked a little bit about it before, but Hebrew basically kind of branches off into Yiddish, which is my last name, Frumess. The name of this channel is in Yiddish, which is German and Hebrew. There's Sephardic, which is Spanish and Hebrew, right? It goes on and on like that. He needed to use the bastardized language to fill in some of those gaps where we had no pronunciations. In fact, the religious word for God, the Old Testament God, Adonai, which you're not supposed to say or whatever, Yahweh or whatever, like nobody knows how that is lost to time. We nobody knows. Only the Kohanes knew. Nobody knows how to pronounce those words, that word. So it's phonetically pronounced Yahweh, but we don't actually know how to say Adonai. Look, all of that, to wrap all of that up, just to say that for me, it's deeply emotional that the Hebrew language was able to be brought back from extinction. It blows my mind that happened. And so to me, that was a mirror in reading about the incredible work that Marie had done or did or has done in order to save her language. And I think about it makes me then think about all of the languages, all of the words for things that, maybe there are words to describe things that have no English equivalent, right? There's no English equivalent for certain words. And those words are lost for time. So maybe those ideas and concepts, which are sort of contingent on the words, like the word gives meaning to the concept and the concept gives meaning to the word. But without the word, the concept kind of loses, it sort of evaporates into abstraction. Does that make sense what I'm saying? It just sort of doesn't exist anymore. And to think about how many of those words from how many of those languages are gone. So the idea that somebody, in this case, a language, in my opinion, and this is what's interesting about something like Latin. Latin is spoken today by lots of people. People call it a dead language, but is it actually a dead language? I don't think so. I don't think Latin is a dead language. I think Latin it's not a widely spoken language in the same way that Yiddish is not a dead language. Yiddish is spoken by over 1 million people. You hear it. If you go to New York, Yiddish is embedded in being a New Yorker. If you ever heard somebody say, I'm going to schlep this, that's a very New York thing. It's also a very Yiddish Jewish thing. So like a language isn't truly dead until the last person, like in the same way that like you die 2 deaths, right? You die, the first time you die is when your physical body is no longer here. But the second time you die is the last time anybody ever says your name, right? Like the moment somebody doesn't speak your name anymore, you're truly gone. Nobody remembers you and you're gone from this world, And so as long as people are speaking Latin, as long as people were, in this case, just Marie, right? It was only Marie who was speaking this indigenous language, Wukchumni. It still was alive. Like it still was alive. Maybe it was on the verge of death, but it was still technically alive. And to that extent, Hebrew was still technically alive because in religious contexts, it never went away, right? Like in ceremonial and religious. And that's, again, language binds culture and culture binds language, But what's interesting, and because of, well, maybe I should, let me continue on before I get to the next part. This is also kind of interesting. So, overview, out of the 7,000 languages spoken around the world, 3/4 of world languages are spoken by indigenous peoples. Incredibly diverse indigenous languages represent the majority of the world's linguistic and cultural heritage. The film Marie's Dictionary provides students an opportunity to learn about how Marie Wilcox is revitalizing her language Wukchumni, which again, I put it down. Please watch this documentary. It's also down in the link. Absolutely worth checking out. What students we're reading. This is kind of like a syllabus thing here, but we'll go into the next thing in a second. The significance of language and indigenous language vitality. All right, maybe I guess that's it. All right, sorry, we're sort of flying by the seat here. This is what is this? Oh, okay. So there's a sequel too. I didn't even realize this. There's a sequel just called Wukchumni, which I guess I should put down in the description as well. So for 20 years, Marie documented her language word by word in the form of written and spoken dictionary. The first work of its kind in the Wukchumni language. So never before had there been a book about Wukchumni, you know. But now, after she had done the dictionary work alongside other family members, they're embarking on an ambitious project of language revitalization. That they're taking classes. Wukchumni classes were being offered at the local tribal community center, but the language was gaining little traction and few were dedicating the time needed to become fluent speakers. Marie and Jennifer continued their work on the dictionary, undeterred but uncertain about the fate of their language. But here's what's kind of amazing: by putting the language into a dictionary, and you see in the movie they're recording, they record the pronunciations and everything. By documenting all of this stuff, the language will live on. Even if people are not ready to speak it again, the language has been documented, which now brings me to this idea of the written word. And, you know, and maybe I should have started with this a long time ago, while back, a friend of mine and I had a really interesting phone conversation. We were talking about writing and the written word. I'm trying to remember what exactly was said, but you know, we were sort of going back and forth about how once you write something down, you take ownership of it, or you can kind of capture it and, yeah, take ownership, you know, put a label on it. Whereas the oral tradition, which was the way of language forever, including that of the Jews, right? The Jewish tribes, was passed out. And what's crazy about that is they went back, they found the Dead Sea Scrolls, right? From the Dead Sea Scrolls from over 2,000 years ago, something like that. And they went back and they found that the oral tradition that we had passed down generation after generation after generation matched what was in those Dead Sea Scrolls, which is absolutely insane to think about, that oral tradition can carry on like that. So you think about all of the oral traditions of all indigenous languages and whatever tribes and peoples and things. And you know, the idea that as long as there's somebody alive to speak it to the next generation, the language and the culture continues on. But when that people is wiped out, the language dies with it. And that is where there's a difference between, you know, native indigenous communities and the oral tradition, what have you. And then when you think about like Western literature, which, you know, the foundations of Western literature begin in ancient Greece, you know, with writing on tablets and things and that. Well, that's not true. It's the Egyptian. Well, the Egyptians had hieroglyphs. Oh, Hammurabi, Sumerian. That's the first one. Sorry, I'm totally screwing this up here. But I don't know. I'm thinking about like the classical in the classical sense, right? The ancient classical sense, the ancient Western classical sense. How about that? You know, where you have authors that are starting to take ownership of things when they write them down, as opposed to when you pass something down orally. It's communal. Everybody takes ownership to participate in the community and the culture that you come from is to be an owner of that language. And so my friend and I over the phone, we were going back and forth talking about these ideas, and these concepts of like, and then plus we're not even accounting for, ancient China, right? Because there was writing in ancient China as well. I'm totally butchering this off of the top of my head, and I'm probably screwing up a lot of things. But what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to like the idea in that conversation that I had with my friend was that words matter. That's what they kept saying to me. They kept saying to me, words matter. And that's something that I've sort of carried with me, and I've thought about that a lot. And I think about it here when reading about Marie and like what she did at her old age. There's a lot of people who like to get to feel such a calling so late in life. Just it's astounding to me. It gives me goosebumps to imagine that at 82 years old, she suddenly realized that A, I know how to speak this language. B, I'm the only one who knows how to speak it. And C, if I don't write this down, this language dies with me. And she has this big family, right? Like she's a giant family and stuff. She's not the last of her people, but she's the keeper of the oral tradition. I mean, it blows my mind. 5 years after filming Marie's dictionary, we returned to visit Marie and her family. Jennifer is teaching regular Wʌkćʌmni language classes to members of the community. Marie and Jennifer sit with anyone else who wishes to join them and speak Wʌkćʌmni. Through conversations, questions, and language and laughter, the language is spoken amongst family and community members. Classes are often structured around words and phrases related to Wʌkćʌmni culture and tradition. For Jennifer and Marie, providing cultural context is an essential aspect of the language revitalization. In the same way that, like, you remember I was talking about how like not only do words matter, but that words get lost, or like ideas get lost. The Inuit people, up north, they have like 50 different words for snow, and then there's another one. It's like there's all these different words for green, like there are all these sort of, and then it's kind of like tied into the culture of it too, right? Like your cultural perspective affects the way that you see the world, which affects the way you think about things, which means that you're going to have different ideas and concepts for certain things that aren't going to necessarily fit with somebody else's. In this case, I'm thinking of, English, and what's so interesting is that English as an imperialist language that is spread across the world, right? People like to talk a lot about colonization, and you can really trace colonization through language, right? Think about, if you go Google it, how many countries speak English? How many countries speak Arabic? These are things to think about. These are things to consider, but more importantly, just because English is the most widely spoken language in the world, there are certain things that exist outside of English, right? And, if those peoples die out, those ideas are lost to time, and that's why diversity is so important, right? Diversity and multiculturalism, because things are lost if we only look at things through one perspective. If we only look at things through English, so many other things get lost, right? Before we continue, I just want to take a quick moment to talk about our sponsor, RIOT Stickers. RIOT Stickers is the place to go if you need stickers. If you want to put words on bumper stickers, if you want to put a Wʌkćʌmni word on a bumper sticker, you could do it at riotstickers.com. Link is down in the description. You go to riotstickers.com/Frumess, and you can get 1,000 stickers for $79. Those stickers are 3 inches by 3 inches, and they're vinyls, which makes them kind of weatherproof, and they have a UV coating that protects them from the sun. And CEO Sharpie Riot, he'll set you up real nice. You just send him an email, and you can get your order started. You go to ridestickers.com/Frumess, free shipping and handling, and you order 1,000 stickers for $79. So link down in the description, and we will be right back after this brief message.
Riot stickers, we are the bomb. Riot stickers, we are the bomb. RiotStickers.com. We are the bomb. Riot stickers, we are the bomb. Riot stickers, we are the bomb. RiotStickers.com. We are the bomb. We are the bomb. We are the bomb. We are the bomb.
And that is a promise. Okay, we're back at it. We're talking. Okay, so the dictionary, since this dictionary was published, the dictionary has become an inspiration to other Native communities working to revitalize their own languages. With Marie's family, speaking Wukchumni has become a collective effort across 4 generations. Isn't that insane? Marie's great-great-grandson, let's think about that. That's 4 generations, Roof? No, 5. That's 5 generations. 5 generations. Oliver is the first person in 4 generations who's being raised from birth to speak the Wukchumni language. Just really fucking incredible. Despite widespread community interest in the language, the challenges and needs of daily life, work, and transportation remain obstacles for many dedicated to the time to learn and revitalize the language. For as long as they are able, Marie and her family will continue to work towards a future where the Wukchumni language is spoken. And it's kind of amazing. Like, that floors me, man. That fucking floors me, especially because, as I said at the beginning, the mirror for me in learning about the history of the Hebrew language and how the Hebrew language was brought back. It's amazing when this stuff kind of happens. And, if anything, just for the sake of culture, of preserving cultures. And that's like the kind of like the sad thing though, about like, and when you think about like, this is sort of a gross generalization here. Like a lot of indigenous and native cultures, they're like the mentality is not about ownership of things, right? You don't own stuff. It's like, it's communal. It's for everybody. There's no ownership. And like the pen and the paper from like a Western perspective is the opposite. You capture it, you put it on paper, you say, I'm the author. That was the first time that's how authors came about. Because, when you think about the oral tradition and all these stories, there's no authors, right? It's just the people themselves, the culture themselves, they are the author. They are the author. With pen and paper, people could actually write their name, So I think that was very interesting. It was very interesting. My friend like kind of brought that up to me. But the ultimate thing to remember here is that words do matter, right? Like words matter. And that brings me to that. I guess that brings me to this right here. That brings me to 2020, the year 2021. So that documentary came out in 2014. Again, I advise everybody to go check it out. It's in the description. That brings me to this. This is the obituary for Marie Wilcox, who saved her native language from extinction. She died at 87. The subject of a Times Op doc, she was, for a time, the last fluent speaker of Wukchumni. And she talks about it in the documentary. She talks about like, her grandparents spoke it. And that's why, and she just always remembered it. And what was interesting, she talks also in the documentary about like the reason why she started writing it on little bits of paper is because all of it was in her fucking head, man. She carried it with her in her head. Isn't that fucking insane? Think about that for a moment. She carried that in her fucking head all those fucking years, man. And she had died before she did that. That language would have been gone. And you know what? I know it sounds fucking crazy. You want to tie it back to the fucking Misfits. It's the same fucking shit, dude. Because Manny fucking recorded those fucking practice sessions. He saved songs that would be lost to time. Isn't that fucking crazy? It's the same thing with fucking Nosferatu. All the prints of Nosferatu were destroyed except for one, you know? Like archiving, preservation, these things are so fucking important, man. Because people are infallible. People are temporary, you know? And these things, they can live inside of people, but they need to be extracted from people too and live outside. That's why, like, getting people's stories recording people's stories, interviewing people before they die. It's one of the most important fucking things you can do, you know? So this is a little bit of her obituary. For many years, it's a little redundant here. She was the guardian of the Wukchumni language, one of several indigenous languages that were once common in Central California that had disappeared. We already talked about that. She started writing down the words in Wukchumni as she remembered them. So as the words were coming back to her, that's how she would start writing them down. And it started in the late 90s. I guess it didn't start when she was 82. And she would scroll them on the backs of envelopes and slips of paper. And then she taught herself the computer. She started typing them into an old boxy computer. Soon, she was getting up early to devote her day to gathering words and working into the night. And after 20 years of labor, of hunting and pecking on her keyboard, Miss Wilcox, who died at 87 on September 25th, produced a dictionary, the first known complete compendium, right? And her daughter says the dictionary was her whole life. The language was dying and she brought it back. So I'm going to skip over this part because we already talked about the documentary, right? Blah, 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 blah. Within short order, they all started learning. She died in a hospital in Visalia in Central California. She had been attending a birthday party for her 4-year-old great grandson when she was stricken by a ruptured aorta. She was getting into the car to leave. That's kind of poignant, I guess, you know. If your last day on earth being one surrounded by loved ones and your great grandson, it's pretty special. There are an estimated 7,000 languages in the world today, a majority of which originated with indigenous people. Many of them are only spoken, not written, and they have no dictionaries. Because of forced assimilation, relocation, and other factors involving Native people, most of these languages are on the verge of dying out. That's the cover of the book. That's the actual book right there. After one of her elderly relatives died about 8 years ago, Miss Wilcox became the only person fluent in Wukchumni. So that's crazy, dude. A dialect of the Tule-Kaweah, I can't say that, Tule-Kaweah, near the Tule and Kaweah rivers in Central California. It seems weird that I am the last one, she told Miss Vaughan-Lee, the filmmaker. It'll just be gone one of these days. But long before she became the only fluent speaker, Miss Wilcox had become fixated on creating the lasting record. Her grandmother, who took care of her as a child, had spoken it, and Miss Wilcox had started out creating her dictionary as a tribute to her grandmother. The dictionary was copyrighted in 2019, but is yet to be published. I think it's probably published by now, right? Right, learning the language. We went over that. She was born on November 24th, 1933, on a ranch in Visalia in the San Joaquin Valley. Her father, Alex Wilcox, was a farmhand. Her mother, Beatrice Erastus, had 7 children, of which Marie was the youngest. She was one of 7. She often referred to herself as the end of the trail. Marie grew up with her grandparents in a one-room house in the Venice Hills Mountains near Sequoia National Park. After she finished the 8th grade, she went to work in the fields as a farmhand herself, mostly picking fruit. She had 4 daughters and 1 son with Joe Garcia, and those 4 sisters married 4 of the Malone brothers. That's crazy. 4 sisters married 4 of the Malone brothers. That's a very wow. That's some family. In addition to her daughter, Jennifer Malone, Miss Wilcox is survived by another daughter, Evelyn Malone. So she had 10 grandchildren, 33 great-grandchildren, and 18 great-great-grandchildren. What a blessing.
Among those who helped Miss Wilcox with her dictionary, particularly with her computer, was Nicholas Luna, 27, an Apache, whom Miss Wilcox brought into her family. Mr. Luna said in an interview that when the family viewed the documentary in 2014, it gave them a sense of purpose. She was training us, and boy, did she train us well. She lit a fire under me and the others to keep on speaking the language and to keep going at it. Now I dream in the Wūkchŭmni language. It's so beautiful. That's beautiful to me, man. I mean, really, that is tremendous. And then I want to go back to before we get out of here. I want to go back to some of these Reddit comments. Imagine not. I thought this was interesting. Imagine, and again, this goes back to what my friend told to me. Words matter. Words matter. Imagine not writing a word because it's on the tip of your tongue, but there's no one around who speaks Wūkchŭmni to offer suggestions. Anyway, shout out to Marie. That's an incredible feat. I mean, if you're the last speaker, then you could just make up a new word and it would exist de facto. That is true. I'm working with the Cree language. I'm working with the Cree language to make a Cree dictionary. And it's amazing to have a fluent elder working with us because sometimes you have words that you wouldn't think about. Ugh. It's absolutely remarkable, man. Her quiet musing, it just seems weird that I'm the last one. Maybe they'll just be gone one of these days. And then she blinks back tears and tries to laugh. I'd fully stop, take a moment. So languages die if you don't speak them, you know, or if you don't write them down. And then that's like the one thing, like the culture of so many of these indigenous native communities was such that we don't own this. We don't have to write it down. We all speak it. And when all of the, you know, terrible fucking ugly injustices, you know, the apartheid, the fucking genocide, whatever, every fucking thing under the sun that wiped so many off of the fucking map, took all of these languages with it, you know? Just remarkable to me. So yeah, that's all. I just wanted to share that with you. I thought that was really profound, you know? And like, again, just like to sort of like dwell on the fact that so late in life to be charged with such a sense of purpose, to undertake such an important work, the legacy, you know, it's not just the legacy of her family. It's not just the legacy of the 200 that are still around. It's the legacy of the tens of thousands of however many of her tribe that came before her. They all live in that fucking language, and all of it was being left in her fucking head. Isn't that crazy? That's all I got for you tonight. That's all I got. I want to say one other thing. Tomorrow is David Lynch's birthday. Is it David Lynch's or David Bowie's? When is David Lynch's birthday?
David Lynch was born on January 20th, 1946.
When was David Bowie born?
David Bowie was born on January 8th, 1947.
Right. Okay. Wow. They were a year apart in age. I didn't realize that. So tomorrow is January 8th. And from January 8th to January 20th, there is a thing. It's a symposium of creativity and art for David Bowie and David Lynch. So starting tomorrow, I'm challenging you out there to go out and do something creative, artistic. You know, I should probably make a separate video for this, and I will. Do something creative and artistic for the next 12 days in honor of David Bowie and David Lynch and Marie Wilcox, in honor of all of them. That's it. Okay. That's it. That's the end of the show. Thank you. Happy New Year to everybody. I think I got a pretty good surprise coming up for you guys. Pretty good. I can't talk about it yet, but
yeah, pretty promising things. Pretty promising things. Okay. Peace. Hair grease. We'll see you next time.